we are jumping into the incredible life and career of a Japanese racehorse named Katsuragi Ace. He was born in 1980, and he absolutely shattered expectations to become the first Japanese-bred horse to win the prestigious Japan Cup. And to understand just how much of an underdog Katsuragi Ace was, we have to look at his bloodlines.
The thoroughbred industry is, it's obsessed with genetics.
Well, completely. It's essentially a highly correlated prophecy to them. Syndicates spend millions engineering champions trying to find the next elite sire line.
But Katsuragi Ace was born with what registries politely call a quote-unquote modest pedigree. His sire was an Irish import named Boise Boy, and his dam was Tenino Venture.
Yeah, which in the racing world means his genetics were painfully ordinary. Before he even put on a saddle, his stamina, his temperament, his optimal distance, all of that was projected based on these very average genetic markers.
So the baseline expectation for him was replacement level, just a horse bred to fill out the middle of the pack.
Exactly, which is why his debut was so shocking to everyone.
Right. I mean, he comes out and wins his first race by a massive 8 lengths.
It's a huge margin, and he actually secures 2 wins from 4 starts as a 2-year-old. But as we get into his 3-year-old classic season, his performance data just becomes incredibly volatile. It really turns into a roller coaster. He enters the Satsuki Show, which is the first leg of the Japanese Triple Crown. But the track conditions are super heavy and muddy that day.
Yeah, and he really struggles. He bogs down and finishes in 11th place.
But then he rebounds almost immediately. In the NHK Cup, which is a derby trial, he draws this terrible wide outside post. He has to run so much farther than the rest of the field.
Right. He's covering significantly more ground, but he still powers through and wins it.
Which gets him into the Japanese Derby, where he gets a very respectable 6th place. And then he follows that up with a 2nd place finish in the Kobe Shimbun High.
Which, honestly, for a modestly bred horse, those are solid finishes. But Grade 1 racing is very polarized. You're either a legend or you are just filler.
And then the Kyoto Shimbun High happens. Katsuragi Ace goes out and actually defeats Mr. CB.
Yeah, and Mr. CB was not just any horse. He was the reigning 2-leg classic winner and basically the absolute darling of the Japanese racing public.
So you beat the reigning champion, you'd think the public would completely change their minds about you, right?
You would assume that, yeah. His market value shoots up, and he enters the Kika Show, which is this grueling 3,000-meter marathon, as the 2nd favorite.
The public finally bought into the hype. And then he just catastrophically fails.
It was a total collapse. In a field of 21 horses, Katsuragi Ace finishes 20th.
I mean, it's like a walk-on athlete who completely dominates the regional games, but the second they get to the national championships, they just entirely choke.
And that is exactly the label the public and the media slapped on him. A choker. The narrative instantly locked in that he just didn't have the mental fortitude for the big races. A dramatic failure, like finishing 20th, creates a much stickier narrative than his surprising victory over Mr. CB just a few weeks prior. The public basically decided the win was a fluke and the collapse was his true identity.
Which is just brutal. But this failure actually served as the catalyst for a total strategic reinvention, which brings us to his 4-year-old season.
Right. His connections make a really smart pivot. They abandon those marathon distances entirely.
They drop him down to middle distance races, around 2,000 meters. And the results are just an explosion of dominance.
Because they finally aligned his race schedule with his actual biology. Middle distance racing is all about fast twitch muscles, quick acceleration, and handling oxygen debt over a shorter time.
They stop trying to force a square peg into a round hole. And it pays off instantly. He wins the Osaka High, which is a Grade 2. Then he wins the Keihan High, a Grade 3.
And then he steps up and captures his very first Grade 1 title at the Takarazuka Kennen. That is 3 decisive victories in a row.
Wait, so he wins 3 straight races, grabs a Grade 1 title, and people still doubted him.
Oh, absolutely. The public doubt was just incredibly persistent.
How do you justify that if you're a critic? He literally won the top grade.
Well, there was a technicality. In 1984, the Japan Racing Association had just updated its grading system. Historically, the Takarazuka Kennen was sort of a fan-voted summer Grand Prix.
Ah, okay. So it lacked a bit of historical prestige.
Right. A lot of top horses used it as a prep race, or they just skipped it to rest up for the autumn season. And crucially, Mr. CB was absent.
Of course. So people are saying, well, you only won because the real champion wasn't there. You finally achieve something massive, you get the promotion, and your critics are like, yeah, but it doesn't really count because of X, Y, and Z.
And it highlights the real danger of being stuck in another entity's shadow. The public was so enamored with Mr. CB that Katsuragi Ace wasn't even competing against a physical horse anymore. He was competing against a myth.
But then they finally get a rematch, the Minichi Okan. It's a direct head-to-head race at that middle distance Katsuragi Ace loves.
And Katsuragi Ace beats him. He holds off the champion and wins by a head.
So he literally proves it on the track. But then, in the very next race, the Tenosho Auto Mr. CB gets his revenge, and Katsuragi Ace finishes 5th.
Which was the worst possible outcome for his reputation. That 5th-place finish was all the fuel the public needed to revert right back to their comfortable narrative.
They were probably thinking, see, we told you. You can't win when it really matters.
Exactly. The unshakable doubt was back. And it essentially backed Katsuragi Ace into a corner where minor victories were never going to be enough anymore.
Right, winning another Grade 2 wouldn't change anyone's mind. He needed something undeniable, a history-making disruption.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the biggest race of them all, the Japan Cup.
And the stakes for the Japan Cup in 1984 were astronomical. Japan had actually never won its own international race before.
Never. Foreign invaders historically dominated it. They just viewed the Japanese turf as an easy payday.
So the domestic pressure was immense, and the media framed this race entirely around 2 domestic legends coming to save the day.
Right, it was billed as the ultimate showdown between Mr. CB, the charismatic Triple Crown winner, and Simboli Rudolph.
And Simboli Rudolph was basically the undefeated emperor, right, a year younger, but he had just won his own Triple Crown.
Exactly. The public consensus was binary. Everyone was certain that one of those 2 genetically perfect titans was going to break the international curse.
Meanwhile, Katsuragi Ace enters the race as the 10th favorite. I mean, he is completely overlooked. 10th favorite.
He was a ghost in the pre-race analysis. The betting algorithms essentially gave him a 0% probability of winning.
But that lack of expectation is actually a massive tactical advantage, isn't it?
It really is. You have no expected value to protect, which gives you the freedom to take a massive, unconventional risk. You have absolutely nothing to lose.
And they choose the craziest strategy possible. The all-out front-running escape, the gates open, and Katsuragi Ace just bursts forward and opens up this huge lead on the pack.
Which is usually a suicide mission.
Oh, totally. I mean, thinking about it like cycling or track, being out front alone is so punishing. You burn all your energy just displacing air resistance.
Right. The lead horse acts as a windbreak for the entire peloton. You are operating at a 15 to 20% energetic deficit compared to the horses drafting behind you.
You do it just to get some TD time early on, but you always get swallowed up by the pack at the end.
And for the first 2,000 meters, it looked exactly like that, a doomed escape. By the 4th corner, his sprawling lead was evaporating. The pack caught him.
And not just any pack. Simboli, Rudolph, and Mr. CB are breathing down his neck. The heavyweights are engaging their final acceleration.
By all the laws of equine physiology, Katsuragi Ace should have been drowning in lactic acid right then. He should have folded.
But he doesn't. He inexplicably finds this second gear down the Tokyo Straight. Stride by stride, he holds them all off and wins the race.
It is an incredible moment.
How is that physically or psychologically possible? How do you survive that final onslaught when you're in an aerodynamic deficit?
Well, it was a masterpiece of pace dictation. Because the media and the jockeys had completely dismissed him as a threat, they literally just ignored him.
Wait, they ignored him? The horse that was leading by a mile.
Yes. The jockeys on Simboli Rudolph and Mr. CB were strictly marking each other. They were so obsessed with their own rivalry that they let the overall pace of the pack slow down.
Oh, wow. So they assumed the crazy frontrunner was just going to naturally die off.
Exactly. They completely miscalculated his aerobic threshold. Katsuragi Ace's jockey monitored his horse's oxygen debt perfectly, saving just enough for that final burst.
So by the time the 2 champions realized he wasn't collapsing, it was just too late. The mathematical distance was too great to close.
He exploited the whole group's mindset. Everyone was waiting for someone else to chase down the leader, and so nobody did.
And with that, he shattered the geopolitical ceiling of the sport. The first Japanese horse to win the Japan Cup wasn't the undefeated emperor, and it wasn't the charismatic champion. It was the 10th favorite with the ordinary pedigree.
It was a massive breakthrough, not just for the horse, but for the entire nation. It proved that Japanese horses could compete and win on the world stage using complex tactical strategies.
But, when you embarrass the elite establishment on a global stage, the establishment always strikes back.
They absolutely do. Which brings us to the final chapter of his career, at the Arima Kinnan. just a few weeks later.
Right. Simply Rudolph enters that race specifically out for revenge. He had just suffered his first career loss to Katsuragi Ace, and he was not going to let it happen again.
There was no ignoring the frontrunner this time. Simply Rudolph targeted him from the start and successfully ran him down to win.
So Katsuragi Ace finishes second. But that second place is actually super crucial, right?
It is arguably just as important as his win. By finishing second, he crucially held off Mr. CB yet again.
Which proved the Japan Cup wasn't just a fluke.
Exactly. He proved it wasn't just a lucky break caused by a sleepy peloton. It was a validation of his actual ability in a grueling end-of-year championship.
He retires with a lot of dignity after that. He had limited success as a stallion, which, again, goes back to the cold reality of his modest genetics, and he eventually passed away in the year 2000 from heart failure.
But the way his legacy is recorded is really interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that, because sometimes when you look him up, he's just remembered as, quote, the horse who gave Symboli Rudolph his first defeat. Isn't that almost tragic?
It feels reductive, doesn't it?
Very. Even after doing the impossible, history sometimes reduces him to a footnote in another horse's story.
It's a common historical shortcut when an underdog challenges a dynasty. But I think we have to reframe that. The deeper truth is that he denied two perfect legends and rewrote history in a single race.
Right, the people who are really paying attention know what he did.
Exactly. If you look at the monument engraved for him, it doesn't mention Symboli Rudolph's record at all. It says, remember the Japan Cup, remember the emotion of that race, and once more, let us see him face Mr. CB.
That is beautiful. They memorialize the structural disruption he caused, not just a trivia fact.
He showed that tactical audacity could outmaneuver elite bloodlines.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.